Welcome to the WealthStack podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Rosic, the director of WealthStack Content Solutions. And I am joined by John Connell, co-founder and CEO of Focal, a company focused on re-envisioning meeting management for financial advisory firms through Agentic AI. We'll dive into what the heck that means in a little bit. But today's topic, understanding how AI is really reshaping this space. So John, thanks so much for joining me.
Really appreciate it, Shannon. Good to be here and excited for the WealthStack conversation.
You and me both, my friend. And finally, this is happening. I know we've been talking about doing it for a while. And I always like to start with my guest's background. And I joke that this will probably be the hardest question that you get this entire conversation, because I want to know what makes John, John, on both a professional and a personal level.
That is such a deep question. We'll see if I can give you some high level here. Some of the pillars that make John include resilience, choosing happiness, discipline, learning. I would say at my core, I have a drive to make the world a better place. I believe that everybody deserves equal respect and see hardship and injury as the best teachers in life. Ultimately, nothing beats real world experience. I'm also a big believer in catalyst moments that make people, and we can chat more on that another time if there's interest.
No, we're going to chat about that right now. What are these catalyst moments and how can I utilize this?
Yeah, no, that's such an interesting dig there. So if you think about those moments in life that fundamentally change the way that you see the world, whether it is, in my case, a near-death experience or living in China and Germany, or coming to the realization, oh my goodness, Santa isn't real. It's the Santa isn't real moment, right? For folks that really reshapes the way that you think about the world. I've had a number of those that I think have shaped the way that I perceive and the way that I choose to live my life. And as a result of some of what I've sort of gone through in the past, my mental mode output is make the most of every opportunity, right? You've got one life to live. So if you're not doing everything you can to hit it out of the ballpark, you're probably not doing enough.
I would have to agree. And it's funny, I went into 2025. I usually don't do resolutions or anything like that, but I just started implementing small changes just to set my day up to be better. I'm not a morning person. Anyone that knows me, like since I was little, my dad used to have to drag me out of bed by my wrist down the hallway, dump me in the bathroom to get ready for school. It's not much has changed like 25 years later. So just taking those moments and ensuring that I'm getting the most out of my day now and not wasting time, still working on things like doom scrolling at night and numbing out, but we'll get there one thing at a time. So yeah. I love that you mentioned that. And I love getting to know the people behind the tech. So let's dive into your more professional side of things, how Focal came about and just high level, give a brief overview of Focal, who you serve, target audiences. And then I'm going to make you please explain in layman's terms what Agentic AI actually means.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, at Focal, we are empowering financial advisors to reclaim 10 to 15 hours a week through meeting automation. So we're going beyond AI note-taking and generating summaries, tasks, agendas. What we're doing is automating the entire back office through tool-specific purpose-built workflows that are executed by AI agents, which are then orchestrated by financial advisors. So if we break that down, Agentic AI really is a type of artificial intelligence that acts independently or human in the loop. It can solve problems without constant human intervention. Focal is building the future home base for advisors to effectively delegate work with AI agents. And that's the core thesis that we're really excited to look forward to going forward. The company background in terms of how it all got started, I ended up on a consulting engagement with a mid-market bank, and we realized going back and forth, there's a massive problem here for financial advisors around the way that work gets done and a perfect overlap with the AI opportunity space around meeting summaries, generation there, pulling out tasks intelligently from those conversations, and roped in Jerry, who's a good friend of mine from past lives. And Jerry had a background at Microsoft, Yelp Chainalysis, and he roped in Clay, who had been with Jerry building from 0 to 1, from 0 to hundreds of millions of users, at Chainalysis, deploying for financial institutions, U.S. government. Clay, by the way, was also at a broker-dealer. They got bought by Goldman Sachs, and then he was early DocuSign before meeting up with Jerry. And since then, we have just been off to the races, brought on an ML all-star as well, machine learning all-star, who he's been published. He's built out LLMs for financial institutions, and really excited for what the future looks like for Focal.
Well, thank you for the background and context. And I want to get into our first segment that I call Stats All, folks. Yes, that is a Looney Tunes reference for all of you that don't know. But according to, and good, we can get into that too. But according to an October 2024 report from Gartner, 33% of enterprise software applications will incorporate agentic AI by 2028. We are not far off, up from about less than 1% last year in 2024. And this will enable 15% of day-to-day decisions to be made autonomously. That's crazy, first off. So knowing that agentic AI is a type of AI, like you said, that can make decisions, take actions, and learn on its own, why does this matter to the wealth tech and wealth management community?
Absolutely. The impact within WealthTech is certainly going to be tremendous, right? This is going to be a $30 billion market in the next few years. And my thesis is that much of that growth will be driven by AI tools that enhance portfolio management or augment client services or profile risk, and really ensuring next generation compliance. The fundamental role of the financial advisor will also shift accordingly. I think that personal brand reputation, for example, is going to increasingly become an important differentiator for advisors that are using some of this emerging technology. I think what it sends a signal towards is the perspective that now is really the time to adapt and adopt, or get left behind by other advisors who are using AI to dramatically do more or spend more time with their clients, deepening those relationships.
Absolutely. And I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again, but if you are at least not experimenting with AI, you're probably already behind. Like, the water in the pot is warm now, and you don't want to be jumping in when it's boiling necessarily. So that being said, advisors need to care about AI, especially as it relates to their day-to-day operations. Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't you want time back? And so you mentioned it in your intro that you're giving 10 to 15 hours back to advisors to focus on what they truly are excellent at, which is obviously serving their clients. So I'm just curious too, what is the perceived impact for enterprises then globally within wealth tech, knowing that all of this is coming down the pike and quickly?
Yeah, I mean, envision what you could do, right? With an extra 15 hours per week. Strategically, advisors could expand their client base. You can grow your AUM by managing, let's say, 120, 150 clients versus 70 or 80. Today, the way that AUM is scaled, it's linearly, right? By adding more advisors to payroll. And so the efficiency gains that are realized with AI are going to be a step function for the entire firm's productive output. And I think that advisors who adopt AI are going to be achieving a better work-life balance. They will be able to embrace more time with family and the golf course if they so choose, right? We're hearing already from advisors that telling clients they're using Focal is also a differentiator. They're now the cool advisor, right? That is using AI to ensure that they don't miss any kind of in-meeting details. They're able to have tighter knit relationships with some of their clients today. And I think this is a scenario where it's up and to the right, in the same way that you look at prior technologies, whether it's the car, the internet, the mobile phone. This just makes everybody's life better. And it's how can you utilize it in a compliant manner that then allows for you to do more with that time, that will really be the key turn in this industry in particular.
And I want to go back to something you said around AI agents, and you said Focal uses vertical AI agents. So can you break down how these agents really revolutionize the way work gets done for financial advisors?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question. When you think about tactically, what are the ways that the next generation of AI tools are going to be different than last? And let's actually talk about specific examples here. So after a client meeting, Wouldn't it be convenient, for example, if Focal understood the context of the conversation enough to be able to understand specifically what work needs to get done in your planning tool? So imagine a world where at the click of a button, advisors can tell their AI agents to walk through specific clicks in a tool like a Right Capital or an eMoney or an Money Guide Pro, perhaps. Understanding what is on screen and bringing the human in the loop when necessary to troubleshoot. And the beauty here, right, is that you can take care of form filling or take care of RMDs autonomously. And there's sort of a long tail of tasks. Tax documents can be both digested, read, and actioned upon. So long term, complex workflows across these tools are also in scope. Think delegation of complex workflows. What does that mean? It's emailing the client to request information, to then go fill out a form, to then take care of a few clicks, to then send that information back to the advisor to make sure that there's a follow-up task that maybe gets assigned to somebody else on the team in the system. That then the follow-up person has a heads up on, we need to now view this process that has effectively been automated in the background. The best AI and the best technology is going to be that which is the most seamless and invisible to the actual user itself.
So you've obviously made an incredibly strong case for AI, but to get even more specific, how does vertical AI, like what Focal offers, win over horizontal AI solutions embedded into platforms like, say, Zoom or Salesforce? And please break down what the heck the difference is between vertical AI and horizontal AI.
Absolutely. When I think about horizontal AI, I think Zoom, Teams, Meet, and there's a number of other AI transcription tools that are out into the wild as well. Vertical AI really tries to be purpose-built. And what that means from a tactical different standpoint, first and foremost, when it comes to generic note-taking tools, some of these links are exposed to everybody on the web. In many cases, they're shared broadly with the team and anybody who might have been in the conversation. Sometimes you even receive an email that says, here's all the client conversation that had happened. When it comes to enterprise compliance, it's very different than a consumer tool that might have specific compliance safeguards in place for anybody capturing communication data, whether that's across video or SMS or phone or in person. And from our angle, the way that we think about this is being deployed within the Microsoft ecosystem. And for us, we are not training any of our AI on PII. We are using exclusively fully compliant capabilities with SOC 2, as a primary framework approach that we're using internally. But back to horizontal tools beyond compliance, oftentimes these tools miss industry terminology. Sometimes there might be numbers that are discussed or client-specific information, and they might be lacking summary output sections like retirement or tax planning or estate planning. And I would argue that really the biggest difference here is that these horizontal solutions don't have purpose-built integrations with tools like a Wealthbox or a form-filling tool for Money Guide Pro. So Focal is going beyond AI note-taking. And really what we're doing is looking at being the tool operator for advisors with the vision for automating, not only the form filling, but also the processes across those other tools with agents.
So let's dig into that a little bit, because obviously the AI application market has exploded. There's been this proliferation of technology just in the last year and a half. There's a whole separate map now just for AI solutions. So, dovetailing off what you just said, how else does Focal differentiate itself from other note-taking solutions?
Yeah, it's two elements there. One is the compliance factor, and two is the proactive AI roadmap in terms of how we're thinking about the tool today. So on the compliance side, we very early on got smart with a number of CCOs, chief compliance officers across Fidelity, Vanguard, Commonwealth, and other known institutions to really understand where it is that regulation is landing and then what needs to be built out in accordance with that. And it's been interesting to see some of how that positioning has evolved under Chairman Atkins with the incoming administration at the SEC, now that they're focusing more on policing investor harm and fraud. And for us, beyond having just that advice at the high level, We on Jerry and Clay's side, coming from a background of institutional compliant deployment, ensured that we're not only checking the boxes with SOC 2 certification, but again, we're built in that Microsoft ecosystem. We never train on PII, personally identifiable information. Your data is your data ultimately, and we'll actually soon be publishing compliance strategies around implementing AI for RAA firms in partnership with a number of industry executives, including a former GC or general counsel at Fidelity. So if anybody's interested in that, feel free to shoot me an email at john@meetwithfocal.com. A shameless quip there. But the other piece of differentiation that we're really quite excited about is the vision for automation long term, and how it is that this new technology, proactive AI, through web-based or browser-based agents, is able to help you take clicks and scroll and effectively map out other tools and take action in those other tools. So you can think Focal really is this hub of orchestration, where as an advisor after your meeting, you have a conversation and maybe you touch on onboarding or retirement or tax documents that need to be managed and filled out. And after that meeting, you've got the Focal AI agents that can go out and take care of those workflows for you. And that's where the magic kicks into high gear as we look towards 2025. Both the compliance pieces that the enterprises, institutionals, and industry are starting to realize are really important, but also the agentic model of how it is that you get work done under the hood. And we're right on the cutting edge of what that looks like.
And look, AI has already proven to be an incredibly powerful tool, but like you said, regulation is always a concern. So how do you see AI regulation evolving, especially with the new incoming administration? I find this revolution really interesting because, like, not to be morbid, but I almost compare it to back when we were building the hydrogen bomb in World War II. There was a lot of discourse going around at just the dinner table, like from an ethics standpoint, right? Of, oh my gosh, is this something we should release out into the wild? Is this a one and done situation? Like, this is scary. Obviously, Soviets a few years later got their own, then we're off to the Cold War. We all know the history there. But I do find it interesting because AI came on the scene. While it's not necessarily a new technology, obviously the applications are extremely different now. And so now you have things like the OpenAI, DeepSeek, which I'm going to ask you about later, things like that.
Yeah.
There doesn't seem to be a similar discourse happening on kind of like the ethics side of things with AI. And look, you can go down that path saying eventually it'll take over, it'll have its own thoughts. It may trick us into believing it's doing the right thing, but on the back end, making sure that it's taking care of itself. It's scary, and it seems like there isn't. It's very much the Wild West still, it feels like. And so while I think it's incredible that there's all these applications to help with automation, with workflows, freeing up time in its current state, it's great. But man, where do we go from here? Because it just seems like the train has already kind of left the station when it comes to AI. So I'm just curious if you're hopeful that you want to see regulation, or kind of, whoa, where are we going? Where would you like to go?
Yeah, the landscape is changing quite dramatically. And with the new administration, there is more openness to libertarian policies, to more of the call them AI forward innovation oriented approach on behalf of companies. So really that's a long tail for folks like Focal and other AI tools that are out there. From the messaging to financial advisors, it's pretty unmistakable. It's embrace AI, or you risk falling behind in an industry where new tools are empowering what could be AUM growth or efficiency gains under the hood. And from the dystopian versus utopian perspective, right? I don't think this is going to be a Terminator moment by any sense of the mean. I look at AI and the way that these technologies come together as empowerment tools. So the famous quote, AI will not replace you. It will be people who know how to use AI that will replace you. And time again in human history, what this equates to is a growth of output on productivity. Right. If you look at the emergence of the internet and, let's say, cloud technologies, Slack, Salesforce, CRM communication tools, collaboration tools that weren't in market, 30 years ago, the world has changed dramatically. You can get done in 10 hours today what took you 40 hours then. And now that you have effectively an additional intern in the room with AI who can help you take actions across your different tools and think through or refine some of the problem statements that you might be facing as a business, you can do a whole lot more with a whole lot less. And so it's up to, I think, human ingenuity to identify and to define where it is that we want to be applying this technology to not only see those efficiency gains, but then also enhance, the tide here. It's a tide that lifts all boats. Ultimately, is the John perspective. So if you can't tell, I'm drinking the glass half full on my end when it comes to what could be done here. And I think we are years off before AGI becomes materially problematic. But even if hypothetically you're able to accomplish that, then you have the walled garden problem of having data and access and authorization across different systems of influence, some of which are on-prem versus in the cloud. Others are stored in the minds of people. And so you would have to do, and maybe, who knows, maybe our AI overlords of tomorrow are already thinking through this, right? But I think that's I'm not too worried about that outcome for the way that we're evolving as a species right now.
All right, let's stick with the optimistic and utopian side of things then. What else is on the roadmap for Focal?
Yeah. The roadmap going forward, when we look at 2025, this will be the year that we start taking the wrapper off agentic workflows, helping advisors pipe data, pipe actions, insights across various tools. Will be the tool that advisors use to automate complex workflows end to end. And really what we're doing here is fundamentally building a different breed of platform than vertical AI note takers, than other types of tools that most people have even seen before. The concept of browser-based agents is new technology. It is RPA 2.0. When you look at what RPA did, the Blue Prisms, the Pegasystems, the UiPaths of the world, I looked at a number of these different approaches on this technology when I was still in the venture capital world. The problem there is that you were dealing with these XY coordinates on a computer screen, and if a button moved from one side to the other, then the entire process broke down. But in the new world era, you can now semantically understand what's happening on screen. And even if the submit button moves from the left side to the right side of the screen, with an AI agent in the loop and human process to course correct if necessary, you can definitively ensure that those systems maintain some level of robustness to accomplish specific tasks and longer term, more complex tasks. So the folks that we're onboarding today, for example, they will be grandfathered into these future product updates. It just happens that note taking right now is the first killer feature that everyone is talking about. And we're excited about it too. Don't get me wrong.
Well, like you said, look, all the cool advisors are using a note-taking app. And so I feel like that's at minimum, if you're going to be dabbling in AI, that's where you absolutely need to start, because who the heck wants to actually sit and take notes anymore by hand? But more power to you if you still love the yellow notepad. But I love hearing about the workflows and integrations, because even 2 years ago, I was getting asked about that, what's the ideal situation for a solution like this? And I was like, if they can figure out a way to automate workflows that go in from the note taker, get pushed to the CRM, be able to send all that out. Oh my gosh, what a game changer for advisors. So I love to hear that that's where you are headed. So I'm sure folks are very excited about that, because that is truly the next step in the evolution of advisors, everyday processes. So that is great to hear. But it is time for segment 2 of this episode, John, that I call Ask Us Anything. And I've gone out to the social universe and asked them to submit questions they want answered by you. And we had a couple folks slide into the DMs this week. So if you're ready for it, I'm putting you in the hot seat.
Let's do it. That sounds like a good time.
All right. I love it. First question. What's the biggest misconception advisors have about implementing AI into their practice?
Yeah, no, I think the biggest misconception is probably the compliance requirements. What actually needs to be done under the hood to ensure that they're on the right track. And this is where it comes down to, let's help them put together a framework, how to deploy it, what are the right ways of then utilizing that across their practice. I think you gave the pitch for us earlier on meeting note generation, summary generation, task generation, CRM clicking. All of those things are in place, but you have to do them in a way that none of your data is exposed externally, right? And for horizontal tools, for example, that might be missing some of the enterprise stamps of approval there, whether it's the SOC 2 or if it's how it is that they're storing information or domiciling where some of that data is stored. There are considerations that the more, I would say, sophisticated firms are really drilling into.
That is a fantastic answer. So thank you. I promised DeepSeek was going to come up again. So for those of you that don't know or are not interested in these kind of topics, DeepSeek just came crashing onto the scene in the last few weeks. It's an open, and correct me if I'm wrong because I am not an AI expert, but it's basically an open architecture model that is way better than ChatGPT. And they are claiming that it was done for much less R&D, a couple million versus the billions that have been spent currently on AI programs like that. So we've seen the news, we've seen the markets, NVIDIA, their stock crashing because of this now, and it's a Chinese application. So the question I have around DeepSeek is, what do you think about all this? There's that debate between these open and closed architecture models. This DeepSeek is obviously wide open. You can go in, start playing with it. Obviously, it's all hosted on Chinese domain and servers and everything like that. But it's an interesting time because now some of the best and brightest from all over the world can go in now and essentially help train this model. So curious if you're optimistic, should we be worried? And this is where I get worried around regulation and things like that. Like, is this going to go off the rails now because it's now a global issue?
It's a great positioning there, Shannon. When you think about what DeepSeek is doing with R1, I think it will be looked back on as one of the big stepstone improvements in the landscape of AI. The fact that it's open source, you could even run it on your own, bare metal, if you so chose to do so. And as you rightly call out, these folks spent just, what was it, $5-6 million to get this up and running relative to the hundreds of millions that the folks over at OpenAI and other institutions like Anthropic have spent. And not to mention that they did it in something like 20 months, right? And if anything, what this means is that you can now deploy AI capabilities so much more efficiently at cost than you ever could before. I think if anything, this is a gateway for a flood of new technologies to emerge that leverage AI, or a call on behalf of industry incumbents today, legacy Fortune 500 firms that are thinking how and where and when do I need to be deploying AI. It's officially super cheap, folks. It's just a question of, are you willing to spin it up on your own machines and then figure out the right ways of applying it. So I do think that the DeepSeek announcement, it's interesting, this week is the biggest AI announcement of the week, even more so than Stargate, right? The $500 billion investment that was announced with Masashi-san and Sam Altman and the new administration. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we're going to be able to do more with less. And I think this goes back to the thesis of how, as a society, do we transition into empowering people to pursue the arts, the sciences, their personal passions, right? And AI will be a key enabler there. From the standpoint of how and when, I am a little concerned on the social side of how do we ensure that folks who are displaced from their job are effectively renavigating what could come next, whether that is a social requirement on behalf of a federal institution to come in and say, hey, we're going to help support you during this transition period, or if we need to be thinking about it from an educational standpoint. And I think the answer is multifold here, right? There's a lot that needs to be done, frankly. And I'm wondering systematically, what are those guardrails that can and should be put into place? That was a lot, Shannon. I hope that wasn't too many different threads to be pulling on there.
No, not at all. It's just, we're in this just interesting time. It's our new version of the Industrial Revolution, right? It's the AI revolution. And that's why I brought up saying that there doesn't seem to be just a ton of discourse around it. It's just happening. And that's, I think, what is most concerning is is our social contract going to change eventually, right? So not to be pessimistic and Terminator-esque, I don't think we're headed down that road anytime soon, but it is something to consider. While there's all this excitement, it's also be aware. Again, I go back to just the ethics around all of it. So we'll have to, in a year or so, come back to this conversation and see where we're at with DeepSeek and what else happens, because you see it changes just like that in this industry now. And while that's exciting, it's also kind of it's an interesting time. So a lot of opportunity, but I think there's going to be a lot that needs to be done just from even a government standpoint, and then all the way down to get everyone on board, just to say this is the direction we're going, and here's how we're going to do it. So I am very curious to see where that goes. So more to come on that. And look, I appreciate you being put on the spot and your very insightful answers, but we have come to our final and what might be my favorite segment, Stack It or Whack It. I even wore the t-shirt because always be branding.
All right.
So I'm going to throw out a few technologies. Be warned, they're not always WealthTech related, especially if I know you. Sometimes they're just random thoughts I have in technology I've seen. And you tell me if they are worth the hype or not. So, stack it, aka use it, whack it, aka lose it. So first one I have for you. Voice activated CRM integration. So just your thoughts on the rise of voice assistants and CRM and their potential impact on businesses and customer relationships. Stack it or whack it.
I love the softball here. I've got to say whack it, right? Unless voice is uniquely solving a unique user pain point, from the biased focal vantage point of re-envisioning, client relationships, updates to your source of truth or CRM should probably be solved further upstream. After meetings, right, your source of truth should be automatically dynamically updated after meetings, and necessary actions just directly piped to your CRM. All that ideally gets taken care of at the click of a button after focal or other tools proactively suggest that you do something like updating a client's address or moving a prospect into your pipeline. So I'd say that that's probably not the most efficient user interface.
All right. One whack it. Love it. All right. Any stance then on self-driving cars? Stack or whack?
Love self-driving cars. Stack it. Let's go. Yeah, I love them. I've got a lot of friends developing autonomous vehicles across Waymo, Zoox, Tesla, Aurora, other leading firms. My hot take there is that it will only be a matter of time before it's actually illegal to drive cars manually. Don't ask me about the timeline though on that, okay?
Well, it's funny. I've seen the Waymos around, like, what was it? They're all over Phoenix and things like that. And it always is very jarring when you see no head in there actually driving the vehicle. But honestly, humans are terrible drivers. I've lived in all sorts of areas like East Coast. We know how the driving is there. And now that I'm out in Colorado and it's a bunch of transplants and no one knows how to drive, I've had to curb my East Coast rage since living out here. So honestly, I am moving in that direction for more
Shannon, come bring some of that tolerance to the West Coast, please. We desperately need it over here. Self-driving or not, okay? Safe driving is where it's at, folks.
There we go. Safe and smart driving, right? That's the message of this podcast. Just be better. Well, John, it's just been an absolute pleasure getting to know you more and learning more about Focal. Please tell listeners where they can find out more about you and what you're working on.
Absolutely. Listeners are welcome to email me at john@meetwithfocal.com, where you can find our LinkedIn page at Focal Secure Advisor AI.
Fantastic. And be sure to like and subscribe to the WealthStack podcast on all major podcasting platforms, and follow all things WealthStack on wealthmanagement.com, LinkedIn, and X, Twitter, if you still call it that. And if you want the in-person WealthStack experience, join me June 10th through 12th at the Boca Raton Resort in Florida for Wealth Management Edge. Thank you all for tuning in.
Thanks, Shannon. Appreciate it.